Welcome, everybody. We are back from the Naviate team with a new series of different webinars covering the different products within the Naviate portfolio. We had a break for a year and a half, and we will continue now with this first one in the end of 22 and continue in 23. So today we are going to talk about the new Naviate Rebar product. So we will share with you the release, what we are working on, etc. So if you look on the, let me see, look on the agenda or who I have with me today. So Hans Sandhoff, he is the technical manager for Naviate for Revit with a focus on structure and rebar. That will take us through what we have within Naviate Rebar. And myself, the global product manager on the Naviate portfolio that we are currently delivering on Revit. And we are planning to share with you today what is in the release of Naviate Rebar that we released back in beginning of October. The current release is out there. We will also like to share with you some of the work we are currently doing, aiming for a release in December. And of course, the most important thing of all is what about the future, the roadmap, what are we thinking about doing, etc. And we have also set aside time to do the Q&A and try to answer your questions, some of them that you asked by registration for the webinar, and of course covering the questions during this presentation. So it's important for you all to know that we are recording this webinar. It will be made available both on the naviate.com website and our YouTube channel. And as I said, feel free to ask questions. I will be monitoring the Q&A field down on the right side throughout the demo, and if it makes sense, I will bring it in to Hans to answer it out, or will we cover them in the end of the session. Just a short information about what is Naviate for those of you that haven't used Naviate or tried it out. It's a suite of products developed by AC professionals for AC professionals. It's been out in the market for like 10 to 12 years. With a focus on to streamline everything around the Revit when it comes to project setup, working with model management, and of course the deliverables as documentation. And we had one foundation or platform to focus on saving time, increase control over data, and try to optimize your different workflows within Revit. But today it's all about the new Naviate Rebar product released for 23. So I need to give my colleague Hans the right to share his screen, and he will take it from there. And please feel free to ask your questions during the presentations, and we will take it afterwards. So Hans, I think you have the right to share your screen now.
Thank you, Jan-Tore. Okay, so I'm going to go through our current Naviate Rebar offering, and also we're going to look at what's coming up in the coming month and what we're planning on doing. So right now I have a developer version of Naviate Rebar installed on Revit 23. I thought we're going to start by just looking at the current functionality we have inside of Naviate Rebar. So in the Naviate Rebar functionalities, we have create. So we have tools to create reinforcement for you in different kinds of structures. So beam, column, and wall is in the current release. Then we're working on opening for the coming release. And we're also doing investigations about connections. Then we have visualization tools. So show obscured, hide obscured, show all rebar, hide rebar, and also the possibility to delete the rebar that you have created with our tools. So if you want to reinforce, for example, a wall with our tools, you select the wall, and then under Naviate, our wall tool, will be available. And in this tool, you can specify how you want to reinforce your wall. So the first thing is main bars. So under main bars, you can select 6 different varieties of reinforcement, but I'm going to reinforce on this way. Then I can select vertical bars. And our functionality is always going to be dependent on the rebar types and the shapes you have in your project. So our functionality will never create, a country-specific shape for you that has to exist in your project before. So here I have a bar type, and that is created in the project. So I'm going to use that bar type to create my reinforcement. Then I can select if I want hooks, the spacing, I have a horizontal bar, what kind of bar type I want for the horizontal bars, and the spacing. If I want connected reinforcement, I can select that. So in this case, I want dowels, top dowels, like this. And if I'm going to use the same reinforcement in many different walls, I can also save this as a setting. So if I go up here and save this, I can save it as a setting. For use later on. And when I want to reinforce the wall, I just select it and I click press apply, and I will reinforce the wall like this. I can also select multiple other walls afterwards and continue to reinforce with my setting and apply that setting. And we will always use the options that are on the rebar cover when we place the rebar. So our functionality will not have a different rebar cover. It will take in consideration the rebar covers that are on the object you reinforce. So one advantage of saving this as a setting is, for example, if I want to do a change here, say I'm not happy with the bar type, I can change the diameter of that bar, and then I can just save this, save the name setting again, and I will update those 2 elements that were done with this setting. So I press yes, I will update those elements, and you will also get a notification what has happened. So rebar is updated for 2 walls. So that's the functionality inside of wall reinforcement. Let's continue with reinforcement in a column. So if I select the column, I can reinforce that, the column reinforcement. And here, it's a similar way to work to reinforce the column. So first, I have to select my stirrups. So here we have many different options. We have just added these options to have W bars. It's not in the current release. It's something that we're working on now. But all the other options are in the current release. And I can select my bar type again. And here it's important to select your shape. So in Sweden, this will be my NS shape. If you don't select a shape, we will let Revit create the rebar, and then Revit will try to match that rebar with a shape you have. And if you don't have a shape in your library that is the same, it will just create rebar shape 1, something like that. So it's important to select the correct shape. Then I can select stirrup distribution if we want 1, 3, or 2 or 3 fields. My main bar type, how many of that reinforcement, and what kind of connecting reinforcement do I want. And again, if I want to use this multiple times, I can save this as a setting and apply it to the like this. And we try to work hard to to always do sets. So in our previous functionality like Rex, this would be single rebars. Now we always do sets. And they're also always connected with the right constraints. So if I go into my column and do a change in the rebar cover, everything will flex as you expect and adapt to that rebar cover. So we take control over that. And of course, I can select multiple and continue to reinforce. I can also use Revit functionality. So in 2023, when I select an object, I have propagate rebar. And I can use propagate rebar together with my column reinforcement. So if I propagate the rebar to these two columns, press finish, our tool will still remember that they are the reinforcement are created with this setting. So if I do a change in this setting, if I change the bar type, for example, and I save this, it will update all my 6 elements. And if I want that, I press yes, and I will see we have updated rebar for the columns. We also try to keep the existing rebar and do changes to it if possible. So update the rebar. If it change a dimension, for example, we'll update the rebar. But if we do something like change the distribution of the reinforcement in this column, for example, and try to apply that, this is not saved, so it's okay. I'm going to create a new in session, and then we will tell you that the rebar is updated and you have to check this report. So we have created 2 new rebar sets. So this is not the same set as before. And that is to help you keep track of if you have numbered the rebar, for example, then you know that you have to renumber or add parameter to the new rebar that is needed in your project. So we support that too. If I want to remove reinforcement I've created with my tool, I can go to Naviate Rebar and delete rebar to start over again, maybe. So that's the column reinforcement tool. Now I'm going to continue with the beam tool. So the column tool supports rectangular and round columns. The tool for beams supports rectangular cross-section of a beam. And it also supports one span. So previous in Naviate Rex, we support multiple spans. We don't do this in the first version of the tools we have now, maybe in the future. And here it's kind of the same interface again. So I can save a setting. I can define how I want my stirrups, which bar type this should be, what kind of shape. Again, this is my Swedish shape for this. If it was Eurocode, maybe it would be 52 or something like that. And it has to exist in the product to be used, the shape codes. And I'm going to select the distribution, the spacing. So I don't want sidebars. And again, I'm going to save this as a setting. And apply the reinforcement to that. So we have 2 connecting columns like this. We continue with the main bars into the column. And you can define or change that as you wish later. This works in the same way as before. I can select the column. I can use my setting, apply that setting. I can also go in and do changes. So for example, if I change the rebar bar to another dimension, and I go into my beam reinforcement and read the setting, it will tell me that the setting I have will be lost because it will not match that anymore, and it will try to update the setting. So in this instance, it will update this to bar type 8, and if I want, I can save this as a new setting. So I can have multiple settings in my list. And I can continue reinforce with that setting. So those are the tools that we currently have inside of Naviate Rebar. So in the released version, we have beam, column, and wall. And then we are working on new functionality, which is opening and connection. So opening is going to be inside the next release, which is hopefully coming out end of December. And I can show you what opening can do. So that can handle reinforcement around openings in a wall or a slab. So let's reinforce some more of the walls, I guess. See, let's use some. We can dive into the wall also. So if I want to reinforce the opening around this wall, I can use the functionality that is coming now then. So the opening reinforcement functionality. See, I have to change the CC on this. Can do it later. And so here I can select how to reinforce my opening, and I can also do that on different sides. So I can select to only define the top or the bottom, left or right, or I can define all of them at the same time. I'm going to define all of the sides at the same time now. We'll also try to do all of the constraints against the openings. If I edit or change the opening, that will work. If I go in here and define another one, again, this is going to be shape C for me. CS, I'm not going to have any hooks. Spacing. On main bars. And no diagonal bars. I'll select my opening and press apply. Let's do wireframe maybe. This is how I will reinforce my opening. So we can do an example of this will too. So let's do a door opening. Just change this so it's not as. So when I do the door opening, some things I have to consider is to also not create an L2 too long. Let's say 150. Should be CS. No diagonal bars. I want this to be 0, so they don't go down in my floor. Then I can apply this to my opening. And again, we try to keep all of the constraints. So if I change the dimension of the door, for example, everything will keep constrained in a nice way, as long as it's possible, I guess. This tool can also be used for an opening in a slab. So if I create just a normal opening, I guess, a slab opening, I can use it inside of that slab opening also, and it works with other types of openings also. Okay, so that's a tool that's coming now that we're working on. Then we have also tools to connect different elements. This is for connecting two walls in a corner, for example, or connecting a column with a beam, or connecting a wall with something on top of the wall. So, and this is a function that is coming later, not in the next release, but hopefully in some of the releases after. And this tool, the thinking about it is that you connect by a face, so you can always select one or multiple faces, and then you can select what kind of connection do you want between those faces. So for example, if I select connect by face, I can select my the top face of the wall, and then I can select what kind of connection type do I want in that top face, what kind of reinforcement do I want to place, so what kind of rebar types, and what kind of spacing, length, and overlap in this case. And then I can press OK to create the reinforcement just on top of that face. And it can be any face, of course, then on any type of object. It doesn't have to be a wall. It could be something else also. It's I can't have a too big radius. I have to have a smaller radius so the rebar fit inside of the wall. So that's something we're also working and looking at, how to be smart about connecting all the different elements that you reinforce. So connecting wall to wall, beam to beam, column to beam, floor to wall, and so on. And this is important now. So this is just research, you can say. So this is not something that is going to be released in next version, but hopefully sometimes next year then. But the opening tool we're going to release in coming version if everything goes according to plan. Okay, so that was a quick walkthrough of the functionality we have inside of Naviate Rebar and also the upcoming functionality. Now Jan Tore is going to talk to you more about what we have planned in the long run.
Thank you, Hans. We got some questions as well, but I will bring those into the Q&A session at the end. Yes, short demo, walking through the different features and the functionalities in existing release and showcasing some of the things we are working on. As I started off this presentation today with, is that we are developing based on feedback and input from the market, our customers working within the industry, and trying to solve those challenges by delivering some features in the different products. So there's only one way to make that happen, and so we are able to capture things, is that we have an ideation portal You have the link down on the side here. A link for every product where you can add your ideas, you can certify ideas, and most important of all is to upvote and vote for the different ideas as well. Because in preparation for every development cycle, we have a cycle for 3 months, high level, is that we are looking on the most voted features and base that input and move those different ideas into planning for developing, either as Hans was talking about, as a research topic, because we know to have more insight on what to do. And some of the features are easy to do in regards to accessing the Revit API, and will be a feature in the release to come. So it's very important to share your ideas and thoughts going forward from here, and we can monitor those. And by voting, subscribing, or adding an idea here, you will always be notified when we move the different ideas into planning, into developing, and when we're releasing the tools, you will be notified. So I encourage you all that after today's session, go into the portal and submit your ideas so we can start working on this going forward. High-level roadmap for Rebar. A little bit about the background, why we went away from the Naviate Rebar extension framework API into supporting now only the Revit API and create a new product, is when we started delivering the different versions on 2019, 20, and 21, we got a lot of questions. Could you do that? Do you support circular, not only rectangular, etc., etc.? And the more requests and wishes we got, the more we saw that the API restricted us. We couldn't do what we would like to do in the old Rex API. So we made a decision last year to move away from that API and only focusing on the Revit API. So we used Q1, Q2 to do a lot of research and trying to prepare a new product. And we had the first POC, proof of concept, done in Q2 this year based on the Revit API. And we saw that you can solve a lot of the wishes that we already got on the old Rebar extension tool. So then we launched the three most, and the first development was based on the most used feature within Rebar extensions. So column, beam, and wall was the most used feature in the Rebar extension product. And that was the 3 features that made the first release. And as Hans was showing, we are working on the opening, supporting double stirrups in the December release. And based on the research we did on connections, that's something that will go into the release in Q1 next year. Of course, having a release, it always comes with some improvements, fit and finish on existing tools, tools, but features. That also will be done in the next release coming after December this year. We also are planning to do some research on split rebar. And you can see there's a lot of things based on the input in the ideation portal. What about slab and footings, pile caps, crank bars, and a lot of question marks. So you attending today are a part of developing Rebar and how you would like to have it in the future. So the more you feed us through the ideation portal, the more fit for purpose will the product be for you out there using Naviate Rebar. That's the goal we are working for. So that brings us to the the QA session. So I will bring your questions from today's sessions and some of the questions that you raised by registering to the webinar today up for discussion. You started off today with existing features, Hans. And the first question popping up today, do we have any plan regarding the annotation? Let me see. No, it's just changed, sorry. Annotation of these rebars. And I guess the answer is go into Naviate structure. Hans.
Yeah, I guess. So Naviate structure has tools to number your rebar. We have tools to do symbols. We have tools to annotate, tag rebar. So that's tools that might already exist inside Naviate structure. Inside Naviate rebar, we're focusing on generating rebar, I guess.
Automating the modeling of rebars, and
Yeah.
all detailing documentation is done in the Naviate structure product as such. So more or less mirroring a lot of what was in the rebar extension product, but with more capabilities and supporting more use cases and modeling a rebar. Do we have an example for shear walls, how boundary edges could be modeled? Do you understand that question, Hans?
Yeah.
Do we need more information?
Yeah, maybe we need more information, but we're only supporting rectangular walls right now, so we're not supporting any more advanced types of wall as of yet. You could do more advanced type of walls, I guess, inside the old functionality, but not.
Not in the rebar product. Is it possible to detail slabs and stairs now? I know we didn't support that in the rebar extension, but I remember we have discussed it going forward in the future development.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people that ask those questions, especially around slabs and floors. I guess stairs, we would need more information about, preferably in the ideation portal then, about how do you want that to be set up for you, to work for you. Yeah.
And another one, is there any plan to enable dowels at the bottom of the columns to use them as connections? I guess that came in. Yeah.
Not right now. I think that we will try to support that by a common connection functionality. Cool. Yeah. So the connection tool will hopefully solve that for you.
Yeah, because they would like to connect it to the floor plate.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what we're trying to achieve with that connect feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were showing the opening feature we're working on. Will that support circular openings?
No, we do not support circular openings at this time.
I guess that's a good time to dive into the ideation portal and add that wish so we can start working on it.
Yes.
Another one about slabs and rafts. That's also for future consideration. If you agree with me, Hans.
Yes, it is.
Would it be possible to work on predetermined lapping zone and have the lap to be placed automated or automatically?
Yeah, so we don't support anything of that inside our tools now, but it's an interesting idea. So we're working, for example, with a split rebar tool that you can use to split the rebar, and yeah. So we have thought about it. I guess we're not supporting it now, but maybe in the future.
Good. Also a potential idea in the ideation portal. So please add it so we can take it in our PI plannings or prepare for the further development on rebar. I guess the next one is partially the same as we started off with when it comes to documentation, tagging rebar, placing BBS, and displaying rebar. All of that is done in Naviate structure.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. displaying rebar as it is commonly placed in shop drawings, etc. So we are not trying to replace the features that is within Naviate structure today, that is focusing on numbering, detailing, etc., and documentation. But give Naviate Rebar as a product for automating as much as possible when it comes to modeling. So there's a difference between those two products in that sense. And a question that I was expecting to be raised, the diagonal additions at corner for openings. For now, we only have straight rebars according to the openings. Or
so this one?
Yes, this one. I don't think you showed it.
Okay, so if I can apply this.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's in there.
It's in there. It wasn't in the rebar extension, if I remember correct. Or
yeah, I don't. The problem with the one rebar extension was it was so limited on what openings you could use it on, so it wasn't really.
Yeah,
useful.
that's also right.
Yeah, so
true. Yeah, could you show us an example how you're tagging rebars? I guess we need to use Naviate structure then. Is that possible?
Yeah, maybe not now, but we can. Maybe not now, but we can answer that for him later. Yes.
Yeah. I even prepare a short video if needed.
Yeah.
I hope that's okay for you that raised that question, to get back to you in the documentation we're providing after the webinar. I don't. Yeah, there's a question about, is there an idea about the clash detection for rebar? I know it was raised a while ago, but usually we've seen that our customers do clash detection in other solutions. Any comments on that, Hans?
Yeah. You can do it inside of other tools, but if our users see a need for it, it can certainly be done. We had that inside of our old tool, so why not? But yeah, you can do it in other tools. Maybe a bit more efficient also. So.
Yeah, there are solutions out there focusing on clash detection in an efficient way and documenting those changes or how you need to manage those clashes in the project. But please add it in the ideation portal and we can start discussing that internally. I think I mentioned the next one about foundation footing for rebar. It was a feature in rebar extension.
Yeah, I would say it's on the roadmap, so it will probably be so foundations, isolated foundations, pile caps, continuous footings, something that's going to we have on the ideation portal and on the roadmap. Yeah, so that's all about voting the map. The highest votes get the most attention in these different planning periods for and into the different releases as well. So that makes sense. I think that was all considered coming from. No, came another one. If rebars are moved to avoid clash, will that affect the save settings? No. No, the save setting is used when you create the rebar. If you move a rebar in your wall after that, so if I moved this rebar, it will not really affect the save setting. It will not change the setting you have saved. Good. You can, however, read the new setting and create a new saved setting from that if you want. But, yeah.
That's the approach we have chosen. So you're able to manipulate and move things around without ruining the settings you have created.
Yes.
And you now uncovering some of any smart way to control host element changes so that the rebars are not affected.
So if I, for example, change this, you do not want to change the rebar. That is, I guess that's harder to do. The rebar is connected to all of their constraints, and it will behave as standard Revit behavior for the rebar that are constrained. You say it like we don't have any tool to unconstrain or detach or something like that.
That's true. Yeah, and remember we discussed it back when we started off. So it is what it is today when it comes to constraints and control the host elements. We're just going to have a look on the questions raised during registration. See that we covered the questions about 2 spans on columns. We only support 1 span in the first release, and I guess there's something to consider going forward.
Yes, it is. If we get multiple feedback that is necessary, we'll look into it. But we started with 1 span, I guess.
I think we more or less covered all the questions. That was the same question was raised during this presentation as for the questions you raised in your registration. These questions about rebar extension as a free product versus rebar, the new Naviate Rebar as a subscription, about pricing, etc. So I would like to share with you that since it's a minimal, or not minimal, but the first release doesn't consist with all the different features that you saw in Rex or the Rebar extension. We have set a campaign price or a low price like 95 euros per year. If you start subscribing now, it will be raised up to 150 euros a year next year. But it is all about reflecting or representing the add value in today's release versus what's to come in the next different updates on the releases. So that's the price. So discussion. A question that came from Africa here. I would like to see the tool to set up rebar segmentation to get the fabrication quantification. Any thoughts on that? Or is that something we should answer after the webinar?
Yeah, maybe he can be more specific, but I guess we don't have any tool to divide or lap or segment the rebar inside of Naviate Rebar as it is now.
No.
So.
There's also a mention about circular walls. How could we manage those when it comes to rebar?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so we don't support that. We don't support that right now. But yeah, maybe we can look into it if it's requested. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a couple of those I can see.
Okay.
And question about how can I get hold of Naviate Rebar? So the product is available on naviate.com. Rebar, Naviate Rebar. You have the possibility to sign up for a 30-day trial. And you have also the possibility to buy it on the web shop or by contacting us through email if you would like to go use that option instead. Yeah, there's a lot of questions about features. Will you add slab? Will you add footing, etc., etc. So the idea we are working by is that we aim to release two new features in every release every third month. And now I have Nicolina, the product owner here in the webinar today as well, but that's a high-level goal at least, to provide you with as much added value going forward in the coming quarters throughout 2023 as well. And sometimes it could be 2 or 3 maybe, or just 2, or sometimes maybe 1, depending on the how big that feature will take us to develop when it comes to resources. It's not only the product itself. We have the website, we have information, you have release notes, you have free trials. You can even chat with us live on the web pages. And of course, access free trials, etc. We have a blog, couple of blog posts coming out every month. Step-by-step guides it could be, or workflows, like you see here. The help desk, a lot of how-tos, how to use the license management part, a lot of FAQs and known errors that could occur and how to solve them. And of course, ideation portal in the middle here on top. The community. So there's a lot of different resources you can leverage by being a subscriber on the Naviate products. And of course, e-learning is a part of that as well. But if you're going to pick one thing here that I would like you to do, is to stay informed what's happening on Naviate Rebar. So by subscribing to the newsletter, we will make sure that you are informed what's happening on Naviate Rebar going forward, when we are releasing things and additional more webinars or presentations. So one thing to pick, stay informed, subscribe to the newsletter. And yes, I took the liberty, Hans, to add our email addresses for contact after the webinar. And if you're not able to reach one of us, we also have the main one, info@naviate.com. That is an email box that is monitored as well. And we try to answer them as quick as possible. So I think that's it, Hans.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining today. Thank you for your
very much.
presentation, Hans. And this will be a continued webinar series going into 23 as well. So stay informed, have a look on our web pages, and please join when you have the possibility. Thank you for today.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.